Residents of an emergency building in the Russian city of Saratov are afraid that they are going to die under the rubble of their own house. The five-story building, built in the 60s, turned into a real slum and was recognized as an emergency housing 5 years ago. But officials are in no hurry to resettle their residents despite the complaints filed to the head of the Russian parliament. Experts say that in a few years, a quarter of all the housing in the many Russian cities will be in such condition.
Saratov is a Russian city in the southeast of the European part of Russia, with almost 1 million inhabitants. And this is a typical five-story building on the outskirts of the city, built back in the days of the Soviet Union, in the 60s of the 20th century, during the time of Nikita Khrushchev. Like thousands of Russian houses, it is already in a major state of disrepair. There is a heavy smell of sewage and dampness permeating the air. All the piping has long been corroded, and the basement is filled with water all year long. Concrete structures are falling apart, and the staircase is literally collapsing under your feet.
Look, this is where a child can fall down.
There has been no heating nor hot water in the building for several years. Disabled Tatiana Zhistakova never takes off her jacket and a hat. Nowadays, electric heaters save people, but they are afraid to even think about what will happen when a severe winter comes. In this area, it can be up to minus 30 degrees Celsius.
There are so many carpets to keep the floors warm?
Yes, touch it with your hands. Here's this one and this one. If this one is on, as they say, you can still walk, but it's generally icy here. Here, the electric heaters are on day and night. There is no central heating.
Experts recognize this house as a safety hazard and unsuitable for living 5 years ago. People complain everywhere. They even reached out to their deputy in the Russian State Duma. Vyacheslav Volodin heads the lower house of parliament and is an active supporter of the war in Ukraine. However, all complaints were forwarded back to the city administration. It is the mayor's office that should deal with the resettlement of dilapidated housing under the federal program, and there are hundreds of such houses in Saratov.
It is precisely because of the inaction of local and regional authorities that houses were not included in the program until 2017.
However, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has recently announced a new program to relocate people from dilapidated housing.
We talk about this all the time. People need to be rehoused from the slums, as I have already previously brought to my colleagues' attention.
Vladimir Putin has been making similar statements since 2008. But the number of dilapidated residential buildings in Russia, despite his words, continues to increase year by year. There is not enough money for such programs, and the regional state funds, which should be engaged in renovation, have been repeatedly accused of embezzlement and corruption. Since 2017 alone, 12 million square meters of housing have been declared unfit for habitation. This is about 280,000 standard one-bedroom apartments from the times of the USSR. According to official estimates, more than 1 million Russians live in dilapidated housing. Experts say that in the near future, five-story buildings like this one will begin to collapse. In some Russian cities, such houses account for up to a quarter of all urban development. Russia is spending a lot of money on the war with Ukraine. Budget revenues are declining against the backdrop of Western sanctions. Therefore, it is difficult to see a solution to the problem of dilapidated housing in Russia, even in the very distant future.